I used to run 5-minute kilometers and it looked a little something like this. 6 years later, I'm now running on average below 4 minutes per kilometer. And in Chicago this year, we're talking October time, my goal is to run it in 2 hours 40. So I need to be consistently running at 3 minutes and 40 seconds. But before I talk more about that in the future, how the hell have I got here? Well, there's a few different reasons, and we're going to start with the not so exciting reason. Deload weeks. It's not the most glamorous topic, but it's one I want to talk about because not having deload weeks held me back, honestly, years in terms of progress. I used to have the mindset of go for a run 2, maybe 3 times a week and just go as fast as I could for as long as I could. Not on every run, but I certainly used to go as fast as I could. And it was of no surprise looking back that every 4 to 8 weeks I had some sort of niggle, whether it was my knees, my ankles, my hips, whether it was shin splints flaring up again. I just never gave my body time to actually have some recovery, because what you don't appreciate is that certainly road running, it is brutal on your body. And you've heard of the term deload when it comes to weight training and being in the gym. The same rules apply with running. So this is what it looks like. This here represents a week of training. And as you can see, as the weeks go on, the volume increases. And when we get to week 6, there's a notable downturn in volume. And this is around 60% of the week prior. So let's say week 5, I run 40 miles. On week 6, I'd run it around 20 to 25 miles, between 50 and 60% volume. The key thing after this is week 7. So week 7 is slightly more volume than what week 1 was. So let's say week 1 was 10 miles. I increase to 40 miles a week. I go down to 20. The week 1 of that next block is not going to be 10 because our body's more resilient. Instead, it could be 12. Start on 12 and the same principles apply. Slowly increase for maybe a month, reduce, and then continue. The best way to analyze this yourself is to get on Strava. When you go to your home profile, you'll see a little scatter graph at the top and it shows you your overall volume. When I coach my clients and when I go do running programming, this is what I look at. I look at their weekly volume and I can tactfully and sensibly increase and deload their running. So please do some deload weeks. The second factor is one that I don't want you to worry about too much because it will naturally happen the more that you run, and that is losing weight. Back in 2019, I was around 98 kilos and I used to look like this. As of last week, I think, I was 88 kilos and I look like this. Now, that's a huge difference. Now, I'm not saying you have to make that kind of transformation, nor do you have to be this lean. But generally speaking, if you carry less weight, you are going to run quicker. Think about all the elite athletes in the world, female or male. They're relatively skin and bone, and that's for good reason. If there's less of you, there is less energy needed to expend in order to run certain paces. So I would say for males, anywhere between 10 to 15% body fat is a really good place to be. And then females around 18 to 25% body fat. Now, the closer you are to that lower number, I would say generally, the quicker you're going to be. I do want to preface losing weight though with the fact that running is a surefire way to do that. But it can often be that people ignore the warning signs and they lose weight very quickly because you burn a lot of calories when you run. What happens though is that you eventually see a massive dip in your performance. So you want to aim for weight loss of around 0.5 to 0.8 per week. That way you can lose the body fat but still maintain your level of performance. Carb loading is a surefire way to increase your overall running performance, and it has worked wonders for me in the past few years. Now, if you are a complete deer in headlights with this topic, I have included a checklist in the description below. So click the link, download it, it's completely free. It will just point you in the right direction in terms of how much you should be eating and what you should be eating. But a general rule of thumb is there are 2 types of carbs. High fiber carbs, like your shredded wheat, like your whole wheat bread. And then you have your low fiber carbs, your white bread, pasta, and rice. Now, these carbohydrates, and by these I mean high fiber, you want to avoid these as much as you can in and around a training run. The reason being is this is very difficult for your body to break down, and when you're running and pounding the streets outside, you're gonna know about it. You typically experience a gurgly tummy. Some people even need to stop and do a you-know-what in the bushes. Try and keep these away from a training run, certainly a race day event. Instead, you want to focus on simple carbs. Now, bread is often seen as the enemy, but just have some white sourdough in your house. And again, in and around race day, it's a really good way to top up your carbohydrate sources without disgruntling your tummy. This is probably my favorite. If I was to pick one carb source to carb load with, it'd be basmati rice. Put a couple of cups of this in the rice cooker the day before, and it is such an easy way to boost your carbohydrates that day. Really, really recommend. And then pasta, the classic pasta party. You've probably heard of that before a race day event. This equally works the same, to be fair. So have an abundance of these types of carbs. And the morning of, I actually have rice as well, sometimes in the morning. But if you are to have porridge, which is a go-to for many, try and keep it 3 to 4 hours before your run. But if you get this right, if you get the carb loading right, it is a game changer in terms of endurance, power, and overall speed. Next on my list is a gait analysis. I've got a bit more of a cinematic vibe for this one because I've actually got the videos in front of me, which is quite the throwback. Back in 2022, I did a half marathon. I was in a lot of pain afterwards because it looked like this.
Picking up that atmosphere, and I believe we might have our third place female finisher making her way to that finish too.
Notably my shoulders and the left-hand side of my lower body. I was in a lot of discomfort for a couple of days after, and I just thought fundamentally something isn't working as it should be. So I went to the guys at Fix My Run, which is a private clinic where they assess your movement as a whole. They put sticky pads on you, they film you from the side, from the rear, and they give you very insightful feedback in terms of how you're running and why you're running the way that you are. And so for me, there were two major opportunities. The first of which were the angle of my arms. I ran like a T-Rex beforehand, as you can see here. And so as a result, my shoulders were shrugged. So for a half marathon, I was basically doing dumbbell shrugs for the entirety of it. Not ideal. And then secondly, my heel elevation, it was very low before I started with the guys that Fixed My Run. And so therefore I had more physical contact time with the ground, meaning I expended more energy, and ultimately my muscles and joints were having to work harder. Whereas if you compare myself to afterwards, my heel elevation is a lot higher. My running economy is just generally more efficient. So if you can go private, I'd highly recommend it. It's usually around 45 minutes, the initial gait analysis. I had an 8-week program set out for me. I was in there 1 hour a week doing various different movements on the floor, on the treadmill. And even to this day, I remember those drills vividly. I know how I should feel when I'm running efficiently compared to when I'm not. And if you're not in a position to pay privately, you can still go to your local running store. They now have treadmills in the stores. And even if it's a 10-minute consultation, you'll get a little bit of feedback in terms of your running mechanics. They'll recommend some trainers afterwards, so it could be a win-win. And you'll just be more aware of the way that you move. Nobody runs perfectly. I certainly don't. But the difference between before and after, I think, has been a huge, huge factor in me running not only more efficiently, but going from that 5-minute on average to 4-minute consistently on average. The final factor, and one that you probably are avoiding, is running throughout the entire year. I've drove about 15 minutes away from home to go into a bit more of the countryside. This is the run that I've just done. And I never used to do this. I was a fair weather runner. I ran when I wanted to, not when I needed to. And there's a huge difference between both of those things. If you're serious about increasing your pace, and I'd even go as far as saying that in the colder months, it's not good enough to just be on the treadmill. It helps, don't get me wrong, but it does not compare to running outside and being on the tough terrain that is the road. The impact is completely different. The turbulence is completely different. You've got to run rain, snow, shine. If you're serious about this, you won't find the excuses. I haven't the past few years, and I've been in the best condition of my life. So yeah, I hope these points have resonated with you. It's honestly changed the way that I've ran completely, and I want that for you guys. So if you have any questions, comment below. If you want to see more running material, let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.